It's interesting the career a rifle can have. It can start off as a smoothbore French flintlock, then get rifled and converted to percussion, then become a breech loader, and then after that become really a frankly pretty cheap shotgun. I'm talking here about the Tabatiere.
By 1866, the French had developed one of the most modern military firearms of the period, the Chassepot. However, the French were not producing Chassepots in enough numbers, and like many, many other countries, decided, well, we've got a bunch of these old muskets and rifles on hand. Let's go ahead and modify them to the modern breech loading system.
Self-contained cartridges and a breech loading mechanism was the name of the game. And while the Americans went to a system where cock the hammer back half cock and you had a flipping forward trapdoor, as they became known, insert the cartridge, close the breech, full cock, fire it, that was really the best, because the British went with another system designed by an American from Philadelphia, Jacob Snyder, and his was a hinged breech, like same thing, half cock. You had a sort of locking breech on the early ones, a better locking breech on the later ones, and you flip it open, insert the cartridge, close it down, fire, but then when you went to extract and eject the fired cartridge, unlike the Springfield, which when that trapdoor went up, a little pawl kicked the spent cartridge out. With the Snyder, you had to pull back and then turn the gun over and dump it. The French went with a system that wasn't even as good as that. It was called the Tabatiere. And it was so named because the breech block looked like a snuff box.
What it involves is a hinged breech block at the rear of the action, and to load the gun, you open the hinge to the right, and that exposes the breech. The Tabatiere uses a very short, squat, 70 caliber slug. And all you do is you slide the metallic cartridge in, you close the breech, and you cock the hammer. And when you fire the gun, the hammer comes forward, hits the firing pin, the gun fires, and then in order to unload the gun, you open the breech the same way again, and there's actually a spring-loaded latch mechanism along with an extractor that actually sits just ahead of the cartridge rim. And you can just pull the entire breech block back to the rear, and that will pull the spent cartridge from the chamber.
So the story of the Tabatiere doesn't just end with the end of the war between Prussia and France. No, these guns got converted in huge numbers. So what to do with them? Well, obviously sell them to the Belgians, because Belgium, and particularly around Liège, was a huge arms-making industry.
So what the Belgians do is they cut these full-length military stocks down on these Tabatiere conversions. They trim the barrels back. They convert them to fire 12-gauge shot shells. And then they send them over to the States. And in order to make them sound a little bit more exotic, it's a marketing term, they call them Zulu shotguns. And Zulu at the time, this is referencing the Anglo-Zulu Wars, the British wars being fought in Africa. And so this is a term that would have sounded exotic even if people didn't really know what it meant. But here they had these brand new breech loading designs that were far better than any muzzle loading, fouling style guns that they would have been carrying into the frontier. And best of all, these guns were cheap. They could be had cheaply, they were very affordable. And so frontier settlers bought these guns. And in fact, a lot of the surviving Tabatieres that we see in the United States today are these so-called Zulu shotguns.
For the collector, the Tabatiere, represents a neat period in collecting and evolution of firearms design. You can put one together with a trapdoor Springfield, a Snyder, And you have, some of the transitional guns that made its way from muzzle loading to breech loading. And there were carbines as well as rifles converted to this system. The carbines especially are kind of cool. If ammo was available for them, I think you'd see a lot more of them out on the range.